So with that, I'd like to call the meeting to order for the regular council meeting of April 6, 2020. This new platform for a council meeting, I'd like to ask residents, as I get through this again, to hold your questions. At the end of each report, I will request council input. Following council input, I will ask for resident questions. If you have a question, again, participants icon at the bottom of the screen, raise your hand, and we can help you to lower it after, but it'll automatically put you in order, okay? So the first item is approval of the agenda. We have two on-table items for the agenda. Can I get someone to move the agenda as amended, please?
Moved. As amended.
Thank you. And there's a seconder as well?
Second.
Thank you very much. Any discussion? All in favor? None opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Next item is the adoption of the minutes. Can I get someone to move the item?
Move.
Thank you. Someone like to second it?
Second.
Thank you. Bruce, you can keep your microphone unmuted, okay?
There's a lot of background noise here, Neil, so I'll keep an eye on it, but it's probably going to be muted most of the time.
Understood. No problem. Thank you. All in favor? None opposed. Motion carried. Item 4, delegations and presentations. We have a presentation by Brandon Mott, Andrew Bourdignon of KPMG regarding the audit reports. Let me turn it over to you gentlemen. Thank you for helping us today.
Perfect. Thanks very much. And hopefully my audio is coming through clearly here. Certainly is the new normal. This is my first ever council meeting via Zoom. And so hopefully this will go according to plan. I do want to say before I start, and thank you for understanding here, that my work arrangement at home is not the best. So if you hear a 13-month-old scream, thank you for understanding about that. In terms of the audit and where we are now, I'll just kick things off here. And then similar to the audit planning report session, we really want to leave time for council and residents to ask questions. I want to just start off with thanking Lorna, Ken, and the team with getting the materials together for the audit. We substantially completed most of the work pre-social distancing and some of the new restrictions. So we were in good shape heading into being able to complete the audit in time for this meeting. I know some other local governments that are in the process of their audits right now, and so that is becoming a bit of a challenge. So I do want to appreciate the village and really Ken's efforts to pull everything together in time for the audit. It went smoothly, and as you'll see through the report, there weren't really any significant findings of note. Next page, please, Paula. Perfect, and you can probably go to page 3 there as well. Great. So just in terms of the executive summary, no changes, like I said, from our plan. We did consider aspects of COVID-19 because there is a bit of a financial statement impact. I'll walk through that in a little bit more detail on page 4. And we're ready to complete our audit pending the normal discussions and matters that would be outstanding at this time. Next page, please. Areas of focus, these are in line with what we presented on at the audit plan. And then, as mentioned, we have the COVID-19 item, which I'll speak to in a little bit. In terms of adjustments and differences, just one minor adjustment that was discussed with management and subsequently corrected for. We don't have anything that we call uncorrected differences, meaning the financial statements are in a good shape there. And as you'll see in the auditor's report, it is a clean audit opinion. Next page, please. Sorry, just one more backup. Perfect. Yep, just right there. In terms of significant accounting policies and practices, no real change for you guys. There was a new public sector accounting standard that came into effect this year. It really doesn't impact you guys, but we did take a look at that. And in terms of controls, we don't do an internal controls audit, but we obviously review the internal controls as part of the external financial statement audit. Nothing that we would find to be a significant deficiency. And what we've done is just really update some of our observations from previous years, and that's listed out on page 8. Lastly here, just want to confirm that we are independent of the village to allow us to do the audit. Next page, please. I'm going to spend just a little bit more time on this slide because it is unique, different, and new. Obviously, unprecedented what we're experiencing here. And there is an impact of this on financial statements. You guys have a December 31st year end, as you know, which is in line with all local governments in BC. And so this outbreak and sort of it being declared a pandemic in March, it doesn't directly impact your financial statements from the perspective of the amounts recorded. So the amounts on your statement of financial position or balance sheet, the amounts on your statement of operations or income statement, those are as they would be. What this is considered, because it's happened after year end, is what we call a type 2 subsequent event. And typically what that would mean is a note disclosure that talks about what happened and an estimate of the financial impact, if it can be estimated at this time. Obviously, given the circumstances, a reasonable estimate of financial impact is not available at this time. We agree with management in that regard. And so there is some disclosure in the financial statements in note 17, which is new this year, just to talk about the fact that that there is this COVID-19 pandemic and that it will have some impact on the village and its operations. The other aspect that we talked about, and this is really a hot topic in the local government space, is around liquidity and cash flow issues. And we had a discussion with Lorna and with Ken. It's not anticipated that there will be short-term cash flow issues as a result of reserves held. But there's lots of discussion in the local government space right now about just getting ready, because we don't know how long this will last for. And so just making sure there's a good forecast in place, understanding whether there may be some short-term borrowings that you want to make sure you have access to if needed, right? Really that worst case scenario planning is something prudent that we're discussing with local governments. I'll take a bit of a pause there just to see if there are any comments or questions from council in this regard. There's a whole host of things that I could talk about here, but to want to make sure that it's relevant and useful for all of you.
Bruce, go ahead.
Yes, thanks. Yeah, thank you for that. Having opened this flag, are there any actions being taken by the municipalities you're aware of that that might be relevant for us? And by us, I mean a small municipality that does not have any significant commercial income and isn't generating income because of the services, many services that we provide.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. Based on what you guys have, and when you sort of look at the different revenue streams and also the programs that are available out there, as a starting point, unfortunately, the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy Program, so that's a 75% one that you would see in the media, that's not applicable for public sector bodies and specifically naming out municipalities. So that's not a program that you have available. The 10% wage subsidy one is still something that you could potentially avail yourself of, and there's some rules around that. For a smaller local government, you don't have the, when you look at revenue streams coming in, a lot of other cities, were impacted because the casinos were shut down, impacts on property taxes in the commercial space, licensing, rec facilities, all that stuff being closed, did have a significant issue on revenues coming in. For the village, really, property taxes is the key one there. And so that's just something to consider as you go through, whether it be cash flows, whether it be decisions that council may potentially look into in the future around deferrals and things of that sort, and what the appropriate rates might be. That's all something that you can manage. Talking to some other local governments and their scenario planning, usually there's, in a traditional local government, you're looking at a 95%, pretty high collection rate on property taxes. I think for the village, it's higher than that. But in their scenario planning, they're looking at scenarios of 70% or even 50% on that number, just to see and stress test what it might mean. Obviously, you guys know your residents best, and so would be able to make some reasonable questions and thoughts as to what makes sense as you sort of stress test your cash flow situation. I would say those are the main ones. You don't have the issue of internet and some of the really remote communities out there. Internet access and the ability to do some of these Zoom meetings is a bit of a challenge, but it seems like that's not an issue for you guys.
Hey, thank you.
Please continue, I guess, Brandon.
Perfect. Yeah. With the other items, I'm not going to spend much time on these. They are listed out there in detail. I'm presuming everyone's had a chance to review the report. We carried out our work in the areas of focus, which are on page 5. No issues from the standard fraud procedures that we need to perform for really any financial statement audit, and that's listed out on page 6 here. Let's see here. Well, if we can keep going forward, please, Paula. We'll just go to page 9. So in the PDF there should be a link that if you click on it should go to our KPMG site. Live updates, real time on all things COVID-19, the various programs, releases. I did hear today that the Ministry of Municipal Affairs issued a circular around sort of deadlines and things of note for local governments. You guys are in good shape, obviously, because you'll be able to meet the normal deadlines for submission, so that's not an issue for you. And then on sort of pages 10 through 20 or so here, they're not numbered just because these were inserted. We had some of these last year around TCA benchmarking. The story here really is that you guys have been paying down your debt, and there hasn't been significant movement relative to other local governments here in the GVA around TCA levels and debt levels. I would say that really brings us to the end of the report, and happy to take this time now for questions and comments.
Council, any other questions?
Lisa had her hand up, Your Worship.
Lisa, please, apologies if I missed it.
Thank you. That goes back to the areas of audit focus on page 4.
Yes.
Have you heard any further? We've been listening diligently to see whether the province was going to permit deferral of taxes for all taxpayers, not just 55 and older, because that's going to make a significant impact on the monies coming into the village.
Actually, Your Worship, I could speak to that.
Go ahead, Lorna.
In a call with the region, it's Lorna speaking. I was on a call today with the regional administrators, and we are all working together with the province, because if there is a tax deferral date or tax, due date at a different time, we would like all the municipalities to have that same date. And so that hasn't been determined yet, but it is being worked on with the province, and hopefully a resolution will be reached soon.
Any other questions from council?
I had a question. I've got a hand up here. Are you seeing that or no?
I got the hand up. Yeah, go ahead, please, Rob.
Okay. My question, Brendan, is basically on, I think it's your schedule or Appendix B. You make mention of a couple of deficiencies. One of the deficiencies was the allocation of public work costs. And I noticed that this was brought up, I believe, in 2018, which is when we just came in as a council. And my question is, did that exist before 2018? Or is this something that reporting somewhere along the line changed as to the allocation of costs toward major road?
Yeah, no, my understanding, and Lorna and Ken, correct me if I'm wrong, this predated 2018, so it wasn't a change in that year, but was sort of highlighted as a question really that it hadn't been revisited in a while. And so in our discussions with Lorna and with Ken, just given the change of Ken coming in, Lots of things I think were on his radar to deal with. This will be on the list in the current year.
So it's still on the list now?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Rod. I don't see any raised hands from the gallery. Are there any residents who have any questions who haven't figured out the raised hand piece? All right. Thank you, Brandon. And I don't have this in my agenda that we have to move this. Lauren, is that correct? We're good to move on?
Yes, that's correct, Your Worship.
Okay. Thank you, Brandon and Andrew. So Ken, if you could outline the next report for 4.2, please.
Okay, I'm unmuted, I believe.
You're good.
Paul, do you want to pull it up on the screen, the report?
Okay.
Okay, if you could go to the first page, please. That would be good there, thank you. So this report summarizes the Village of Belcarra's 2019 financial results and year-end position. And so there's a recommendation there that at the end of this presentation, I would ask council if they would like to consider that, because that's a recommendation that's needed to move forward with the draft financial statements and to move them to final financial statements. So in terms of the village's results from 2019, it had a accrual basis surplus of $144,000 for 2019. And that includes amortization expense for TCAs and other accruals. At the end of 2019, the village had unrestricted accumulated cash surplus in all operating funds of $339,762, an approximate $65,000 increase over 2018. The reserve fund balances increased by $189,000 to $1.164 million, and long-term debt decreased by $136,000 to $3.7 million from $3.5 million. And if we go on to the next page, please. You can see here a summary of all the changes in the reserve and investment in TCA and inventory accounts and the surplus accounts. And you can see, as was mentioned, that the surpluses have increased by $35,000. The reserve funds, which are broken down into general capital, general operating, community works, the MFA cash deposit, and water debt repayment, are standing at $1.164 million at the end of 2019, a $189,000 decrease. And you can see that tangible capital asset investments have decreased by $243,000, most related to amortization, and that debt has went down $136,000. So we have investment in TCAs of $7.4 million, and our inventory held for consumption has decreased by $2,600 to $13,000. So our total accumulated surplus, as you'll see on our statement of financial position and statement of operations, is at $8.995 million, and a $144,000 increase from the accumulated surplus ending December 31st, 2018. So if we go on to the next page, you can see here what the budget was versus what the actual was, and you can see what the variances were and an explanation of those variances. In terms of water connections, the actual fees from water connections went up due to one-time injection of funds from Metro Vancouver for a Belcarra water park connection. The major grants are transfers from governments. The restricted ones were down because basically the village didn't proceed with certain projects, including asset management, and the bus stop lighting project, for example, was budgeted at $200,000 to come in from a grant from governments, but the project on the expense side didn't proceed, and therefore, because the grant was not received. On the permits and licenses, it was the first year of implementing parking bylaw and tickets, and so there was a substantial increase in revenue. You can see at 114,000 versus a budget of 97,000. Interest income was up due to higher cash balances and interest rates. There were other revenues that were recovered related to one-time fees related to a planning project. So therefore, the other revenues were also up. So if you go down to expenses, you can see that the expenses were slightly over in both general government and public works and transportation. And that was due to additional planning, legal, and finance support costs, and extra legal planning costs partially recovered up above with the other revenues, and some additional staff hours. And in terms of public works and transportation, there were higher amortization costs than budgeted for and additional wages. And in recycling and refuse, it was basically higher by about 5.7%, and that resulted from higher processing and hauling fees and wage costs. And in the water system, it was over the budget by about $13,000, and that was because of an additional allocation of public works costs to the water fund. So you can see at the bottom there, the basically $144,000 surplus that was actual for 2019 versus a budgeted surplus of $357,000. So if we keep going to the next page. So in the next page, it explains each of the statements within the financial statements. There's a statement of financial position, and it is somewhat like a balance sheet. And it includes financial assets and non-financial assets. And when you take the position of all assets and liabilities, there was net debt of $2.116 million, which means the village's liabilities were greater than its financial assets by that amount. And the village also had non-financial assets of about $11.1 million at the end of 2019. And together with the net debt and its non-financial assets, that comes out to the accumulated surplus of the $9 million. And that shows up on the first statement within the financial statements called the Statement of Financial Position. You keep going down, Paula, please. The next statement is the Statement of Operations and Accumulated Surplus, and it's on page 2 within the statements. And it reflects the $144,000 actual surplus that I just explained earlier, based on revenues of $2.056 million and expenses of about $1.9 million, which generated that overall $144,000 surplus. And you can see in this statement that the accumulated surplus is the $8.995 million, which corresponds with the surplus on the Statement of Financial Position, the first statement. So if you keep going down, please. So the statement, there's a statement in there on page 3 of the statement. It's called Change in Net Debt. And that comes down to the net debt figure explained earlier of $2.116 million, which is decreased from the net debt in 2018 due to the payoff of the longer term debt that the village has. There's also a cash flow statement on page 4 of the statements that show the operating, financing, and investing activities that result in the ending cash balance. So at the end of 2019, the village had $928,000 of cash in its bank. And in addition to that, they had investments in about the $900,000 range in the MFA bond fund as well. So the important part of the statements are in the actual notes to the statements as well. And those are in pages 5 to 21 of the statements. And these provide greater detail as to certain financial statement items. So if you go down, Paula, please. So I'm not going to go into each of the notes, but they are quite extensive. I'll just talk a bit about note 18. That's the segment disclosure. And these are detailed statements for each of the village's operating funds. The general fund, and the general fund's broken down into general and transportation, the water fund, and the waste and recycle depot fund. So those statements are shown on page 17 to 21, and it also explains the various segments on the first page. And these all comprise and the total of the annual surplus of $144,000. They all net out to that, but you can see these statements are very much more detailed than the other statements in terms of annual revenues and expenses. Is that the last page of the report, I believe, Paula?
Yeah.
And so the financial statements follow the report, as you can see. And so I'm open to answering any questions on the statements, and I'm sure our auditors would be available to answer any questions as well if I'm not able.
Thank you, Ken. Lisa.
On this is page 3 of 5. Can you explain again under other revenues, the budget, the actual? It was budget is 17,000 basically, and revenues of 50 plus. It said recovery of one-time fees related to planning project. Can you explain that again, please?
Yeah, that was the temporary use permit.
So it had to do with the ELC?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I thought it was. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa. Anybody else? Any other questions? All right. I see nothing up from the gallery as well. So can I get someone to move the item?
I'll move.
So moved. Oh,
Thank you. Second?
second.
Thanks, Lisa. All in favor? None opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Ken. We move to item number 5. Ken, if you can outline this report as well, please.
Sure. I'll just wait for it to show up on the screen. Okay, so this report has an attached bylaw, and that is the 5-year financial bylaw for 2020 to 2024. And there's a recommendation to provide first 3 readings to this bylaw. And this bylaw is consistent with the last budget meeting direction from council, and that is noted in quotation marks, and that is that the 2020-24 financial plan bylaw be brought forward to reflect scenario C, including a water reservoir in 2020, a fire hall in 2022, and funding of $350,000 for infrastructure deficit from taxation over 3 years, with amendments to include a water reservoir at a value of $3.8 million and funded by the sale of 1 road end block for $2 million and with 73% grant funding. So if you go on to the next page. This was basically scenario C that council gave direction to at the last budget meeting to move toward a financial plan for the 5 years that reflected 15% property tax increase in 2020, 15.75 in 2021, 22, and 23. And that 15.75 includes 5.75% for the infrastructure deficit over 3 years. The water rate increases would be 10% per annum, and the ward rate increases would be 5% per annum. So the major projects in the plan include the OCP. There is money for land preparation and development over 3 years at $175,000 a year. The water reservoir is included in 2020, and the fire hall in 2022, and the land sale proceeds projected are noted as $2 million in 2020, $2 million in 2021, and $2.5 million in 2022. So if we go to the actual bylaw itself, this bylaw reflects those budget decisions. And if you go to the actual schedule of the bylaw, this is basically reflects everything noted in scenario C that council has discussed and provided direction to at the last budget meeting and had deliberated over budget discussions. So this reflects all those things. And if you go on to schedule, the bylaw includes 2 schedules. That's Schedule A. And Schedule B is a requirement of municipal legislation that communities show the financial plan objectives, policies for funding and distribution of property taxes and permissive tax exemptions. So in A, the first part of the funding sources, you see what funding sources are coming from which areas in terms of operating and capital from 2020 to 2024 there. And so the categories in that funding sources are those as noted in the community charter. So if you go to the next B, I think, yeah, it shows the distribution of municipal property taxes across the property tax classes. And this was 2019 because we don't have 2020 yet. So 98.6% comes from residential, a small amount from utilities, and a small amount from recreation nonprofit. And so the total 2019 municipal tax draw was $734,000. And of course, that would go up by 15% if the bylaw goes forward then. And if you keep going down, you can see there's wording similar to previous years over permissive tax exemptions in the bylaw as well. So that's the bylaw that reflects council's budget deliberations.
Ken, would you mind reminding us the 15% equates to for the average valued home in Belcarra? Was it approximately $378?
Yeah, I just have that
increase
up
in
on
property taxes.
I just have it up on an Excel spreadsheet, so I'm just going to take a quick look at it. Okay.
Sure. The 15 sounds obviously like a big number, but also for real perspective, the dollar figure for the average house in Belcarra isn't going to be important.
Yeah. I'm just trying to minimize this here. Doesn't seem to want to minimize. Can I minimize my screen here? View options. Exit full screen. Maybe that'll do it. There we go. Okay. Yes. So it's 300 and in terms of the 15% tax increase for an average assessed value home, which is about $1.3 million in 2020, just on the property tax side of things, it's $251 increase on an average home. There's about a $90 increase in water and about a $16 increase in waste and recycle depot. So the total together equals $357.
Okay, that's the increase for the average valued home in Belcarra. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, can I get someone to move? Well, we have a note here that the recent amended legislation by the province allows us to do 3 readings and an adoption in the same meeting if we should so choose. So I wanted to put that on people's radar because we've debated the budget quite a lot. If we should so choose, we can adopt tonight, or we can do the 3 readings and continue to discuss in advance of an adoption at a subsequent meeting. We have the time for that as well. So I wanted people to be aware that we have the ability, if we are done debating this, to do an adoption tonight as well. So can I get someone to move the item, please?
I'll move the item.
Thank you. Thanks, Bruce. And discussion from council. I don't see any hands up. Any discussion? Bruce, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to say, and I think we touched on it earlier, that I don't have objections to what we proposed here, but I do think we need to keep a very close eye on what the province is going to provide in terms of flexibility, particularly for those people that are over 55, fine, they can defer. But for those that are under 55, very important that we can make some allowances for them. And I think we have to keep an eye on the evolving situation there. I also think, and it may not be necessary if the province moves, but I also think there may be some flexibility for us, even if the province doesn't, in terms of effectively allowing people to basically not pay this year, because we go through a cycle, and Lorna may want to have a look at that again if the province doesn't act. In terms of moving into a cycle of having unpaid taxes.
Okay, good points, thank you. Anyone else? I don't see other hands up from council.
I'm trying to.
Oh, that's all I need to know. Lisa, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was going, where's the hand? I kind of agree with Bruce, but can I, through the chair, speak to Lorna about that? Like, what if the province doesn't permit 54 and younger to defer their taxes? Is there that on the table? Like that I mean, how can we do that? Because do we have the funds to do that? Like, if we don't have that income coming in, how's that going to affect us greatly?
That discussion also, Your Worship, is on the table with the province and the regional administrators and everyone else who would be involved. So there are the 2 things: having a later tax due date, and the other one is property tax deferral, and asking for the consideration that they increase who would be eligible for that. So those are 2 big topic items that Metro Vancouver as well and all of the municipalities are looking for further information from them. And they told us a couple of weeks ago that the information would be coming in the short term, but we're not sure what their short term means, but hopefully soon.
Okay, Carolina?
Hey, hi. I see every day in the news, everything's changing every day. But I've been seeing a lot of municipalities holding back on new projects, like laying off staff because of the economic environment right now. My concern here, there's a couple of projects that I see here, like the OCP, and we'll get to it because there's Lorna's report, I guess, at 5.3. My question here is there any projects that in the meantime, and I'm talking specifically about the OCP at this time, that we could perhaps like hold on to until we have a better idea, a better sense of what the economic situation is around us. And the reason why I ask that is because I know if there's any amendments to be done in the OCP for projects that we want to do and that we feel that it's urgent projects, I understand that council could do small amendments. And then perhaps, you know, we can keep that money in the bank while we are not sure what's going to happen in the long run here.
So good points. We're currently on hold already. Recognize? So we're on hold. The election was put off for the committee members.
Yep.
And it's indefinite until we know that it's appropriate to be able to proceed and the time is right. So you're absolutely right. The money is not going to be spent until we have confidence that it's within our economic feasibility, or we have a risk tolerance that is acceptable in order to begin the project again. So you're correct. So
because it's you know, in my view at this point, especially at this economic environment, it's a project that that it will take a long time, a lot of staff time. It will be a 1-year committee. So if there's stuff, like I said, that could be done now in order for us to complete other urgent projects, then I would prefer that way, to do it that way. Now I have a question for Ken. Ken, I understand that we put the fire, the tank for the 2020 budget. Does that have any implication on the tax raise that we're doing this year? Because we know by what the engineer told us and for the engineer report, we know we're only going to have a response if we're going to get this grant or not in January of 2021. So would it perhaps be better to put this for next year, because we're not going to get any response for the grant? Because we do, another thing that we learned from the engineer too, the grant will only...
Hey, Carolina, you're going to need to repeat the question.
the grant is accepted.
Carolina, can you go back about 20 seconds and repeat your question?
So okay, should keep that in 20, if we keep the tank budget in 2020. Does that make sense?
So your internet connection was a bit messed up, but I think, Ken, what she's asking is, should we keep the budget item for 2020? Just before you answer, Ken, I will point out that I will point out that our water engineer is
oh, I'm sorry, Neil. I think I lost the connection.
Okay, so our water engineer has indicated he thinks that grant will not be responded to by January, but we are seeking other grant sources as well. And don't forget that Lions Bay applied for their grant in March, and in September of the same year, the tank was not only built, but it was tested and fully functioning. So we have the ability to advance this far more quickly than our water engineers thought is with that one grant application. So Ken, do you have anything else you want to add?
Oh, okay. Yeah, if I could. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, right now the water reservoir project doesn't have an impact on property taxes. It's being funded by the sale of the one road end lot and by grants. So in principle, it wouldn't proceed unless a grant is received. And so work would be held off until we realize a grant, basically.
Until we know for sure. So we're not spending any money as of now until we know for sure if we're going to get the grant. What other grants are there available for this project? And do we know a timeline for the response of those other grants that Neil was talking about? Is that federal? Is that provincial grants? What kind of grants are those?
Your worship, our engineer is looking into what grants are available, and he will be bringing another report to council on that. But there are grants from other levels of government.
Okay, and there's a lot of work, I understand there's a lot of work to be done around the Crown land where that tank would be placed, as well as with the indigenous community, correct? So that would also, that's why the time limit that he was putting on his first report was to have the tank built, I believe it was by 2023.
Well, I don't know that he said particularly it was a lot of work about the Crown land, but definitely an application needs to go forward on the Crown land. And I spoke to him about that today. And he will be preparing that this week.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say a lot of work. I meant
Yeah.
to say it's a long time until we can achieve those 2 steps, right? It could take a long time because it's not dependent upon us only, right? It's not our
Well,
land.
Sorry to interrupt, Your Worship. Yes, and it could certainly be delayed now also because of the COVID-19. Everybody's flat out dealing with that. So we're not sure how soon they will be reviewing it, but still we will be working on it. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I understand we have the hold on some projects. What are the do we have a hold on all projects, as Neil was saying, or it's just on the OCP as of now because of the COVID-19?
I didn't say we had to hold on any projects.
Okay, you just said, okay, it would take a while. All right. Okay, these are my questions for now.
Lisa, you've got it. Oh, wait, Bruce, you're up. Sorry, Lisa, you've already asked once.
Okay, I'm good.
We're recycling, yeah. So I just wanted to go back again because of the issue on taxes and just add a little more detail. And Lord, I have no idea how practical this is, but I think it's something we should look at. And that is if we assume that the province does not give us any flexibility and doesn't grant the opportunity to defer taxes to those under 55, I think we should discuss whether we have any control over the penalties associated with non-payment of taxes. Because I know they're established to dissuade people from not paying taxes, and that's perfectly understandable. But given the circumstances we're under, if we can control that interest rate, then that I think would be a gesture to those who really cannot afford to pay their taxes this year or pay them in full. The other point being, if I understand that process, that's a cycle by which ultimately your property is sold, right, to pay the unpaid taxes, what, 2 years in? I don't recall. I think we've had 1 or 2 cases, so I think it's 2 years in before the municipality has any flexibility. And I guess I'd also like to know, do we have flexibility in terms of that? And that was it. I just wanted to leave that with you. I'm not expecting an answer off the top of your head. Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce. Ken, would you like to respond to one of the questions? You've got your hand up, Ken?
Yes, just in terms of property tax sales, the property unpaid taxes have to be for 3 years before a property would be put up for sale, not 2 years.
Thank you. Lisa, back to you.
Oh, thank you. Are we concerned with this pandemic, I'll call it, with getting grants now with all of the CERBs and everything else, all the reliefs that have come through federally and provincially? Are we concerned that they might put a hold on grants that are going to come to us, both, again, provincially and federally? I mean, the money's got to come from somewhere. I mean, they keep saying that they're using the rainy day fund federally, but money is not, they just don't keep printing it, right? So I'm concerned that we're relying on projects for grants that 2020 is just like, should be frozen.
So it's the opposite right now for frozen. The stimulus that's in the billions and billions of dollars is for shovel-ready projects. So our job is to get this as shovel-ready as possible to take advantage of any infrastructure, because that's where they put the money into, is typically the infrastructure projects. So that's part of the reason there's a rush to get this ready to be funded. The grant application was beautiful timing to be able to get that on the radar.
Doubt.
And so if we can't secure the grant, we don't have an option still to not get the water reservoir. We're deficient, and that's per Metro Vancouver, per Belcarra's water engineer, per North Van, per the FUS, and the fire department. So we have to get this reservoir done. And so the goal is to get the grant and offset obviously as high a percentage as possible for the spend. But we've got to get this done no matter what.
Great. So if I can continue, I don't see any other hands. So we will proceed just going to sale of road ends with the OCP, just going forward on that small portion, not the entire project, but just the what I call imminent projects that we talked about on the OCP rather than the project as a whole, so we can move forward with that. Or is that our goal still?
Absolutely.
Fantastic. And I have one, oh, sorry. I'm done.
No, it's okay. At least keep going.
No, Rob had his hand up. Thank you.
All right, Rob.
Yeah, my point here is that our funding on selling the road end is what was going to carry this, and that hasn't changed anything. So I'm trying to figure out, and these are all budgetary items. So it's very, I'm just trying to figure out where we're going with what we're talking about here. When we're talking about a budget item that we're gonna pass, and it's going to be funded as we've already discussed in the past. So I'm trying to figure out where we're going here. It seems to me like we're doing a loop around again, and we're bringing up and rehashing old stories, if you will. And COVID or no COVID at this point in time, because they're budgetary items, if for any reason they get stopped, they would be stopped. There would be no impact. There'd be no expenditure. There'd literally be no grants obviously coming in if that's what the concern is at that point in time. I mean, effectively, we have the road ends. I guess we have a parcel tax where we get an amalgamation to 3 options. And if we want to start talking about budget items and what we're doing and changing up, then I think, you know, we need to take a look at who's got an appetite for which options, if you will, at this point in time. We do have other options on this, and that is, as some people have said, a parcel tax.
So if
That may leave a lot of, you know, your concerns about grants and money's going out, et cetera. I don't know. I'll just throw it out there. But, you know, my personal feeling, and I'll put it out there right now if this is an appropriate time, is that we have 4th reading on this and get on with it. It's a budget item. We put together a budget, and that's what a budget is.
Okay, so if I can bring us back, thanks for all the comments. If I can bring us back, the point we're discussing right now is the budget. The points, which good questions, confirm the points that we're not spending money that we don't have, meaning that we're not actually spending money on the water reservoir in advance of either receiving a grant or having cash in the bank from alternative sources. So there isn't a risk, and there hasn't been throughout the whole conversation we've had with this budget thus far to get to here. The OCP, it is on hold. Okay, it is on hold. We will proceed with the minor amendments. We're not in a rush to get to the OCP and we're not going to take on any risk to get the OCP addressed because we don't need to take on any risk. So that is on hold, but leaving it in the budget, if we are unaffected and we decide that we're ready to ramp up after COVID and any kind of stimulus or any negative impacts from property taxes, we then have the choice as council to then begin that project again or defer it. So there isn't a massive risk, nor are there any tax implications with the budget that we've got to this point. So I'd ask if there's any other comments from council before going to residents to where we are right now. Carolina, just Carolina, for the future, if you go to the participants button at the bottom of the screen, you can put your hand up, because I'm not always watching your video, and so I don't always see your hand. So if you go to the participants button at the bottom, you can see raise hand. That also helps me because I do have that list constantly showing. Go ahead. Carolina.
Okay.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, I just want to speak to Rob's comments for some clarification.
We got to stay on topic with the budget, please.
Okay, so I can respond to his points of amalgamation or parcel tax.
No, this is not the time. This is the budget. We're on the budget now. We can talk about that later. Okay. So now we have to decide: are we going to do 3 readings? Or are we going to do 3 with the adoption on the budget? This is the, I don't know how many we've had here. I haven't heard anything that's been a considerate concern with the budget the way it is now, for risk or otherwise. Are we comfortable in making a motion for the 3 readings and the adoption?
I think, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. I honestly, at this point, because everything is so uncertain out there, And like Lisa said, I have a bunch of concerns about the grants too, which you said it wouldn't be a problem here because we wouldn't go ahead with those. I would suggest to do the first 3 readings because we don't know, again, we don't know what's going to happen in the next 2 weeks. There's a lot of things changing. You know, my personal feeling is that, that might be just me, but I don't think council should be spending any extra money besides of what we consider urgent. Okay, so I'm not talking about sale of road ends. So I just want to make that clear because I already declared conflict. So I'm not talking about that.
Let's stick to this budget. If you have a point about spending money that you'd like to talk about on the budget, bring up the specific point.
I do. What I was going to say is why don't we do the 3 readings, okay? And hold on a couple of more weeks until our next meeting for adoption so we can know better what's going to happen in general.
Okay.
I would be more comfortable doing that if council would agree.
Okay. Anyone else on council before I go to the gallery? Rob, your hand's up. Go ahead.
I've got my hand. Maybe it's not working from your end.
No, you're good. You're good.
Okay. I think at this point, I'd like to move that we do the 3 readings and adoption, and let's put it out there. And if council doesn't agree, then they don't agree. I'd like to move that, and let's move on and get over this budget.
Okay. Thanks for the feedback.
Can we hear from the other 2 councillors as well on this? Can we hear their comments on doing the 3 readings and adoption, or only 3 readings now with adoption followed by the next meeting?
Your worship, if we have a amendment to the motion, then we need to have a seconder before there's any discussion.
So Rob, are you making a formal motion? Rob? Okay, I unmuted you.
Yeah,
He's been muted.
Okay, Rob, go ahead.
am I okay? Yes, I am making an amended motion.
Okay, so Rob, your motion is to do the first 3 readings and the adoption?
Correct.
Can I hear a seconder?
Yeah, I'll second for the sake of discussion, Neil.
Thanks. Okay. And so Bruce and Lisa, anything else to add?
Oh gosh. I thought we were just going to do first, second, and third today. I wasn't considering a 4th, and I feel more comfortable knowing that these funds, water reservoir, whatever, or everything, that these are not, they don't have an impact on our property taxes increase. I'd like to further discuss the water reservoir, whether it's today or, afterwards if it's pivotal.
So Ken's already said that it doesn't affect our property taxes, and we are going to further discuss the reservoir. All we've done is a grant application thus far. Bruce?
Yeah, thank you. First, can I say this is actually running very smoothly? I'm impressed. With respect to Rob's point, I guess I'd like to ask the question, what's the advantage to us? I kind of don't like, just as a matter of principle, doing all 4 in one reading, because if someone is not paying attention to council, they missed 1 meeting, everything was done. I don't think there's any such anxiety on this case, but just as a matter of principle, if it doesn't have an impact on us that anyone can identify, I just assume wait for 2 more weeks and give it 4th reading. However, if there is an impact, I'd be happy to hear about that.
So I'm not aware of an impact other than a small risk that we had a meeting canceled, and then we'd have to hold a special meeting to have the 4th, the 4th reading. So the addition of 2 weeks, I can tell you that there's not expected to be anything related to COVID long-term planning when it comes to the actual quarantine and isolation within the next 2 weeks. That's not expected to change. We may get word from the government as to whether or not they're going to support or not support a deferral for taxes. But Lisa, to the point earlier, this doesn't impact taxes anyways. So this budget we've been discussing for months it's not being impacted at all by property taxes. And we are fortunately the most sheltered municipality in Metro Vancouver by virtue of not having any commercial tax impact. And so we are going to see at 98.6%, I believe, of our income, our property tax coming in from residents. We are the most protected municipality, which is good because we're also the most broke municipality. And so I don't think in the next 2 weeks, we're likely to see much. If you're adamant that we have to wait for 2 more weeks to do this, then that's okay process. But I don't think you're going to see that there's anything that's going to change in 2 weeks, just based on what we're hearing from Dr. Bonnie Henry, other than what the province could say about whether or not they would help to defer until a September 2nd property tax piece. But that still won't impact for property taxes for us either for this budget.
And just a point of information, Your Worship, our next council meeting is scheduled in 3 weeks.
3 weeks. So we're getting even tighter.
Calendar.
Okay, thanks, Lauren.
Oh,
We're
3
getting
weeks.
a little tighter.
Oh, suit.
Because of Easter. Mhm.
So might I just go to gallery and to the residents? I don't see any hands up. Would anybody like to comment on this as we're having this negotiation in advance of this vote from the gallery?
Didn't Deborah have her hand up?
She did, but she put it down.
Deborah.
All right. Peter,
There
would
she-
you
oh,
like to talk, Peter?
Peter.
Peter, do you have a comment?
Yes. Do you have me on?
We can hear you.
Over here.
My comment was going to be to do with talking about the parcel tax possibilities, and you requested that that be done later. So that's why I lowered my hand.
Thanks. Yeah, we'll hold on to that. Let's just focus on the budget at hand, please. So
Mhm.
you're back on the list for the parcel tax.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right, so Rob's got a motion on the table. It's been seconded. Can I get a vote for, we do 3 readings and the adoption for that motion, please? All in favor?
I actually will be in favor of that, provided this is a proviso that water reservoir has no impact on our taxes,
I'll
which
let you-
I've been
Ken-
assured of by you guys. So
Ken, would you like to speak up again, just so Lisa feels better?
Yes, the water reservoir has no impact on property taxes.
There you go. All right, so all in favor of Rob's motion?
I am.
Okay, that's 4, and Carolina, you're opposed?
I'm opposed.
Okay, so the motion passes. And so can I get, on the actual agenda, can I get all in favor on the agenda? Sorry, on the agenda, item 5.1 for the budget, all in favor? Lisa, I can't see it,
Oh,
sorry.
I'm sorry. I had a question. I'm so sorry. Man.
Oh, hang on.
Yes.
Yeah, Your Worship, it's been passed.
So we're good?
Yes, you're good. Mhm.
Okay, thank you very much. So then we're on, so Lisa, can you hold your question and get to it in a little bit for the next, will it be relevant again for another agenda item?
I should have asked for clarification ahead of time. I apologize.
Okay, well, we can get back to it later
I'll
if you
talk to
like.
Ken.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, so let's go 5.2 then. Ken, the fees and charges bylaw, please.
Right, I'm just waiting for it to come up here onto the screen.
Paul is a machine. Just give it a second.
Yes, so in the budget, council has approved a 10% increase in water fees for those connected and not connected, and a 5% increase in waste and recycle depot rates. Now, there is a bylaw attached that will complete those increases in those rates. Because bylaws cannot be applied retroactively, it means that the previous fees and charges bylaw will be in effect until June the 30th, and this new bylaw will come into effect on July the 1st. So the rate increases instituted on July 1st will work out for half a year, and then a half a year you'll be under the previous bylaw. But together with the 2 bylaws, it will be a 10% increase in water fees that are connected, not connected, and a 5% increase in ward fees. So if you look at that little table there, the effective rate for all of 2019 for water connected is $1,119. Paula, can you zoom the screen up a little bit, please?
I don't think so, Ken, because that's,
Okay, I'm just, it's very small on my eyes here, but, oh,
There you
there
go.
it is, yeah. And for not connected, the annual rate would work out to $785, and for the ward recycle and depot fees, it would be $332. And that would be the net effect of the two bylaws, with this bylaw coming into effect on July the 1st for half a year.
Thank you, Ken. Okay, everybody, we have an option again, and this isn't a new thing, so I'll bring it up. We can move this for the 3 readings and the adoption, or we can do just the 3 readings again. Does anybody have a concern in advance of me asking for a motion to move the 3 meetings and the adoption, just because this is something we've discussed at length already? No concerns? Okay, hang on, Rob, you're muted. I'm unmuting you, Rob.
I'm unmuted now.
Go ahead.
Now, just a question, Ken, before we get to that point. Neil, on the Village of Belcarra fees and charges that are included in our agenda package, it's got the basic, what they are now and what they would be increased to, but there's also a user fee for fire sprinkler system. I'm assuming the user fee for domestic that's the same dollar figure and not an additional $1,220 if you have a fire sprinkler system. Is that correct, Ken?
Paul, if you could just pull out the bylaw maybe and we'll take a look.
sorry, I keep talking to him, I can't hear him.
So
Just scroll down a bit, yeah.
right down at the bottom, Paula. Right there.
Yeah. So the question is that,
So is the user fee would be obviously the basic for fire protection,
right,
domestic for using the domestic water.
right.
And it's got a little quotation on there. I didn't know whether it's from somewhere else, but certainly we're not going to penalize somebody with the sprinkler system that hopefully will never go off $1,220.
No, that's not a separate fee for
Okay.
sprinkler. That's just the same flat rate fee, and that's
So
the way
it's
the
a flat
bylaw is worded.
Okay. Thanks for that clarification.
Okay, thanks, Rob. So can I ask if anyone would like to move for the 3 items and adoption? Would someone like to move that?
I shall,
Anita? Thanks.
as amended. I would assume
Thank
that.
you. Rob seconded?
Second, yes.
Okay, any other discussion on this?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Bruce.
Thanks, Neil. I guess I want to go back to the point Rob has raised, just so we're clear on it, because it's always struck me as an anomaly. Because if there's anything that we should want, it's the presence of sprinkler systems in the village. And I just want to be clear. So in the case of someone using only a sprinkler system, are we charging $1,220 a year to them for simply having a sprinkler in their house if they don't use domestic water?
Because it would.
No, that is, if you notice the user fee for domestic is 1,220, and
Yes.
the same if they have a fire sprinkler system.
Okay, suppose I don't use the water. I'm sorry, it's a very detailed point, but it's one that strikes me as odd. If there is no domestic water being used, i.e. I'm on a well, but I've connected just a sprinkler system, do I pay?
No.
I pay the fire protection fee, right?
Can that be done?
$8.56. Do I now pay $1,220 simply because I have a sprinkler in my house with 0 water use?
Yes, I do not believe we have anybody in that situation, but that's what that does indicate.
Can it be done where someone can hook up only for a sprinkler system to the municipal service and not,
Yes.
and then be working off a well for the rest, for all their potable uses?
Yes, but it's very complicated, and I think that's why that rate applies, because they have to make sure there wouldn't be any cross-contamination with the water system. And it's been like this forever. You can see this is the same thing that the bylaw had last year. This isn't a change.
Can I just get a comment from Stuart? I think Stuart, did I get is your hand up, Stuart?
Rob says.
Well, Stuart's one of our resident experts. Go ahead, Stuart.
Can you hear me now?
Oh my God.
Anyways, CAO was saying the systems have to be completely separated. In other words, if you're connecting city water to a house and you want to maintain a well service, that well service could be used for lawn sprinkling or something else, but they cannot be interconnected. And if you were to use it simply for a sprinkler system, that would definitely create some unusual concerns in terms of waterworks. So I'm not saying it couldn't be done, but it doesn't. I don't think it's very realistic.
Hey, Stuart,
Stuart, your voice is breaking up.
Stuart, I'm going to turn off your video because your voice is breaking up, and the off chance that your comments will be a little clearer. Okay, so I'm just going to turn your video off for a minute. So it's an important point that's getting discussed now. I want to make sure that we're all understanding the same. There is.
Okay, so
go ahead, Stuart.
It's breaking up.
I was just going to say, now to repeat myself, but anyways, the two systems have to be completely separated, and it has to be shown to be that. So if you're hooking up city water, sprinkling your lawn, or for other types of things, but to hook up your well service for your drinking water supply and try to hook up city water for fire would create some unusual conditions that would be very challenges, let's say, passed to our satisfaction, be considering it very closely.
And that's why that rate was put in, your worship.
Okay. Thank you. Rob, you have your hand up.
Would it not be appropriate to put user-free non-domestic or fire sprinkler with non-domestic water use? And that solves the problem. Covers off all indications.
Just to be clear, you're saying basic fee fire protection includes fire sprinkler system?
No. The very bottom item on the page of this bylaw, user fee fire sprinkler system, change that to fire sprinkler system without domestic water charge or connection. So you would just change the heading on the top of that to basically specify that they're not hooked to domestic water, but they have a water sprinkler system.
Well, it sounds like it would be an extremely unique circumstance per Stuart's comments. If someone was to consider doing it and they could do it to the code's satisfaction, we don't want to disincentivize people from putting in a fire sprinkler system.
Yeah.
So I'm in agreement with this point. Bruce, your hand is up.
Yeah, same point you're making, I think, Neil. I just, maybe we could leave it with Lorna to simply ensure that there is no financial penalty in any case where someone places a sprinkler system in their home.
That's correct,
It makes no
Your
sense
Worship.
to me to allow that to be the case. And I'm happy just to leave it for Lorna maybe to look if any amendments are needed and perhaps bring it back for fourth reading. I don't think there's any panic on this one.
Do we need to refer this back, Lorna, or can we amend this so that that is reflected in this, so that there is no penalty whatsoever for someone to hook up to a sprinkler and that get reflected within this current agenda item?
Your worship, since we haven't had any trouble with this bylaw and the wording in the past, and you have a motion on the floor for 3 readings and adoption, I would suggest that you go ahead with that. And if I feel that there is a conflict, I would bring back an amendment.
So, and would we look to amend in advance of the vote to include something along the lines of what Rob was just proposing?
No, I don't think so, your worship. Otherwise, you should just give it 3 readings.
Any other thoughts from council or gallery on whether or not we should, I mean, if Lorna says that we're good to go with the intent being that no one is going to be financially or punished. In fact, they're going to be encouraged to have a sprinkler system. And that whatever it's going to take for that to be the case, then I don't think that there are any remaining concerns. Is that reasonable for council?
I'm good with that.
Yeah. Bruce?
Yeah, I'm happy with that, Neil, as long as I have always been uncomfortable with the way it's worded. Maybe I've always been wrong, but I think we need to do everything we can to encourage the use of sprinkler systems. So
Yeah,
I just, as long as I'm assured that there is no additional cost to anyone who decides to make the effort to put in a sprinkler, then I'm happy.
Carolina?
No, I'm good. I'm okay with that.
Okay, so Lorna, we've got your confirmation that that is the case.
Yes.
With that in mind, everybody, I'm going to move for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
None opposed. Motion carried. Thanks for the clarification on that, guys. That was an important discussion. So Lorna, for 5.3, ongoing planning studies.
Yes, your worship, I brought this report forward due to the discussions that were taking place with regard to the sale of the road ends and the OCP, because the sale of the road ends, when we proceed, as we proceed with that, there would be an amendment required to the official community plan. And so I needed to seek clarification that we could go ahead and do that in parallel with the OCP if we were moving forward with the OCP, which, as we've discussed tonight, it's on hold. So the report was simply to provide clarification that we're fine to go ahead with the sale of the road ends, proceed with our work plan for that. And there should be a report back to council by the middle of May from the surveyors and the appraisers on that. And that will ultimately bring forward an amendment to the OCP. But if you will recall, we also had an amendment to the OCP last year related to the temporary use permit for ELC. So from time to time, the OCP is amended, and that won't stop us from doing a complete review of the OCP when the time comes.
Okay, thank you. So can I get someone to move receipt?
I'll move.
Second?
I'll second, Neil.
Thank you. Any discussion from council? Any hands up? What happened to the, okay, so guys, I'm trying to work off the participant button, okay? So I've got this big thing on the side of my screen that we get hands up in order. Lisa, you're first. Thank you so much for following the rules.
Well, I keep looking for the hands.
You're up, Lisa.
Thank you. Lorna, thank you for this report. It was really great. I really enjoyed reading it. So when you say, I just want to get clarification. When you say the OCP is on hold, we are moving forward still with the surveys and all that kind of stuff. It's on hold because we don't have a committee.
That's
that
right.
Correct?
The full OCP
That's what's on
review.
hold. That's
Yes.
the only thing that's holding things up. Nothing else is holding things up.
No, and it isn't holding anything up. We're just
Great.
not proceeding with that right now. But it's
Fantastic.
affecting any of the other work we're doing with regard to the road ends.
Thank you. Thank you for that clarification.
All right, Lisa, Rob, you're up next.
A couple of questions, just point of clarification again in reading this is, my understanding is, well, I've heard of a number of things. And when does the surveyor have to have his contract completed? We have
He has to have it completed, but he's starting on it this week, I believe, or next.
So he, in the original, I think, RFP, he indicated it would be 3 weeks after he started. So will he be finished in 3 weeks?
Yes.
Okay, so basically 3 weeks after he starts, and that's very quickly. The second point was that I noticed that it appears that there's some road ends that aren't road ends at all, but they're actually lots. Is that correct?
I'm just going to leave that up to the surveyor to do his report, and then I'll bring it back.
So he'll address that issue in the report?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. All right, that's my 2 points. Thank you for the clarity.
Thanks. Any comments from the gallery? Sorry, Carolina, I didn't see you. So there's a participant button on the bottom of the screen. And when you click the participant button, then there's a raise hand. If you hit your raise hand then, because I don't have you on the screen all the time.
Okay. May I make my comments?
Please.
Is that okay? Okay, I just want to say that I think that's the way to go, to hold the OCP for now. $100,000, it's a lot of money right now, and due to the current conditions, it has to be held back anyways. So we can go ahead with the sales of road ends with this, but it has to be amended. So thanks for the report, Lorna. It was very clarifying here, because I know a few of us had a lot of questions about this subject. So yeah, and there is also, I wanted to address, because I don't want people thinking that we forgot that. We got in the past few months or few weeks, we got a few letters from residents asking about subdivision. And I know some people were excited about the OCP starting, so they could start those conversations about subdivision of lots. My question here, Lorna, you said according to the province, it's something that it can be done. Is that correct? In Belcarra, the subdivision to 0.5, instead of subdividing a lot to 0.5 to 0.25.
That would require an amendment to the OCP, and that would come up through the OCP review.
Okay, and my question to you is, if you looked up and you're saying here in your report that it could be done even though we're not in sewage, correct?
Now it can be done, yes. There are new techniques for septic, and so they're able to accomplish that on smaller lots. And also in particular, if there's a water system, because when the lots were first subdivided in Belcarra, there wasn't a water system at that time, and that made a difference because it did a well as the septic system.
Okay, so my question is, so we know with the province it can be done, but we are part of Metro Vancouver, the region. Do we know their thoughts or the regulations on that? I understand there is a few documents, I think it's dated back to 2011, that said, and it was a document from Belcarra that said that we could not subdivide more than 0.5 per acre. So in order, I guess my point here is, I don't want to go and spend a whole lot of time and work to then have Metro Vancouver saying that we cannot do that.
My report, yes, indicates that that has changed since 2011.
But even with Metro Vancouver or just with the province? I'm talking about Metro Vancouver region.
Metro Vancouver is the least of your concerns.
Yes.
Believe they want us to get this done, and they're doing everything they can to help us get this done. If they wanted it blocked, they wouldn't lend us at no charge their entire engineering team to be able to even help us to advance as much as they have.
With the subdivisions of lots, you mean?
That's what's going to pay for this, yes. Yes.
So you're saying that we have the green light from Metro Vancouver to go ahead and do subdivisions of 0.25.
No, we haven't. There's no, I don't know where you're getting this 0.25 from.
No.
That's not on the table at all. There's been no formal request, and the OCB process is what is required in order to be able to allow that final. To Lorna's point, the province is what matters, and the province is already advanced, and we can go an awful lot lower should residents decide that they'd like to go smaller.
Well, what about the regional growth strategy for Metro?
But I think we're really beyond the topic, Your Worship, of this report.
Agreed, and I wasn't even aware
The topic
that
of this report, Your
I
Worship.
wasn't even aware that anybody had written in asking about subdividing. Lorna, how many people do we have write in asking about that?
Yeah. It's really beyond this topic at this moment, Your Worship. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I can't help.
I don't know if I agree with that. I just want to make sure that we're not doing anything that is in conflict with the regional growth strategy from the Metro Vancouver, because we are part of Metro Vancouver. So,
Metro Vancouver expects us to become financially viable yesterday.
That's not what I'm asking.
Yeah, but how do you think we're going to do it?
That's not what I'm asking. I'm asking if we could do such subdivision, if we can subdivide 1 acre lots into 4 lots of 0.25.
It's not even been broached.
But Neil, I think we should check this. I would ask staff to check on this because
Your Worship, I would just like.
Go ahead,
we
Lorna.
would just like to clarify that would be part of the OCP review.
It's part of the formal process.
I have a concern here. My concern, because I've seen that happening before.
We heard your concern. Thank you for your concern. This is not what we're talking about here.
Lorna's
report is what we're discussing right now.
I understand, and it's part of our report. It is, in my view, it's part of our report. I just want to make sure that we're not going to spend a whole bunch of time and money in consultants to then have the region saying to us that we can't do because it's in conflict with their regional growth strategy.
Your point's been made. Your point's been made a couple of times. Thank you.
I just hope we spend money before we have that answer.
Yes, your point's been made many times. Thank you. Deborah.
We have to be unmuted.
Oh.
You're ready.
Okay, now.
So I'm unmuted now?
You're unmuted.
So I'm looking at a document that's part of the agenda tonight, and there's a section here called Local Services Act 0.602 that shows that we already can go to 6,750 square foot lots. If the terrain is bad and if the terrain is good, 7,500 square foot lots are already allowed at that level of the provincial act. So I'm wondering if a couple of brave councillors might want to do a motion tonight and a seconding to start the process of an urgent and emergency OCP amendment, specifically on the minimum lot size, and that is the only thing. And this is going to help us get the show on the road to do with financial stability and on many different angles. Including selling road ends and getting a good price for them. So do we have a couple of councillors who might be interested in thinking about doing something tonight?
Your Worship, that type of a motion would have to be a notice of motion. It would have to come back with a report.
That's a big one, Peter. Your point's well taken. It obviously is already allowed by the province and per Lorna's report. And so the OCP process amendments and the formal review will address both of those. And it's a bigger conversation than we can have tonight. I apologize.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
All right. I don't see any other points. So we're just moving receipt. Can I get all in favor?
Receipt.
None opposed. Motion carried. Thank you. Reports from mayor and committee representatives. The only thing that I've got from the mayor is just to make sure everybody's confident that the Saskatchewan Volunteer Fire Department is operating well. There have been no cases of a patient-related quarantine or instances of COVID. There have been several self-isolated members, but not related to responding to calls. That's related to their own personal interactions and travel. So the department is in good shape. They have amended their protocols, process and procedures, and they are comfortable with the way things are. I asked for the report. They didn't come to me saying they needed help with anything. In other words, they are very comfortable with the way things are. Anything else that council would like to report on? All right. We have a bylaw for adoption. Can I get someone to move the item under 7.0? This is the indemnity bylaw, so can I get someone, so did someone move it?
I'll move it.
Thank you. Can I get someone to second it?
I'll second it.
Second.
Thank you very much. We've had a lot of readings on this one. Would any discussion again? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries.
Was
Correspondence.
anyone opposed? I'm sorry, it was hard to see.
Carolina was opposed.
Yes, correct.
Sorry, I thought I had Carolina seconded. Who seconded? Lisa?
Lisa,
Sorry, thank you.
no problem. This is already, as Bruce said, running much more smoothly than I could have.
Thanks.
So for 8.0, there are 13 pieces of correspondence. Can I get someone to move receipt?
So moved.
Second.
Seconded, thanks, Rob. All in favor?
Oh, are we going to have discussion on correspondence?
We don't usually, if you'd like
I would
to.
like to have discussion on correspondence.
Well, we have receipt first, Your Worship.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we've moved receipt, and so we haven't got to the information items where there's actually a conversation point. We should vote to move the receipt, and then we can have the conversation about them. So all in favor?
Receipt.
None opposed, motion carried. And would anybody like to discuss anything out of the information items?
Hang on. Are we in the information items or? Okay. On the correspondence. Okay, I would like to respond to a couple of letters here.
Carolina, then go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to start with John Wilm's letter. First, I'd like to thank everybody for your letters and your feedback. But I would like
Would you please give us the letter number, the number on the agenda?
8.8. 8.8.
Thank you.
Thank you. So there is a few affirmations here that I just want to make a couple of comments about this letter. John Wilm says that council approved 3 to be considered by staff when he was talking about the meeting from February 10th on the motion that council approved 3 road ends to go for sale, to be prepared to go for sale. Okay, we were voting on a scenario there. And he asks here why we didn't approve 7. If I can recall, like, I believe he was at that meeting. So I just want to let him know that at the time, it was not possible to approve 7. We simply didn't have the funds to do 7. Okay, I wanted to talk to him about that one first. He also says here on the part that says, well, we have one counselor that has a road end adjacent to her home and feels that it will cut off her view. I would like to make a comment on this. I believe he's talking about me. I'm the one who declared conflict on the selection of road ends because I live right in front of one and I recognize it affects my view, and I have always declared conflict on that one lot. What I want to say here is that he says that I feel that it will cut my view off. I would like to let everybody know, because maybe not everybody knows, I have never made public statements about that one road end or how I feel about that one road end. So I would like to make that very clear. When I voted on the 3 and not the 7, it was because simply we had no money. Ken was saying we had no money, it couldn't be done for the 7 lots. When I voted for the 3 lots, I knew that one of them could be very well like the road end in front of my place. So I just wanted to make clear that I wasn't trying to block anything. I was just taking steps according to the length of our legs at the time. Okay, so I wanted to make sure that that everybody knows that I never made any any comment publicly about how I feel.
We got it.
Okay. And I always made it very clear that I was in conflict on that one lot. And now I decided to step down from the conversation completely. And there are some very strong statements here saying that we should resign if we don't back up the mayor and this and that. I just want to make it very clear to everybody here. I don't think council should always vote anonymous. I don't even think that's healthy. I think everybody have their point of views on different things. And I think calling for our resignation because we did something, he misunderstood of something that it was done, I don't think is a fair call. Okay, so I would like to say that. Now I would like to speak about Sherry Chisholm letter as well on 8.9. I think it's item 8.9. She also sent a letter to council and made a delegation saying the same thing. And I wanted to make it clear again from her comments. She says, from a councillor that has stated that the road end by the residents should not be sold for various personal reasons. I have never said anything publicly about that, so I would like to let everybody know. And I have, as far as the monies that we get from the road ends, I'm not declaring conflict on how we're going to spend that money. I only declare conflict on which road ends are going to be sold. So I'm not going to have any participation on that conversation. But also I wanted to make it clear that I was never on record saying personally how I feel about that one lot.
Got it.
Out of clarification here, there's a lot of misinformation out there and strong statements being made, and they're simply not true. Thank you.
All right. Anybody else? And let's try to respect the time limits. We're butting up against them as each councilor is supposed to have the platform for it. Rob, you're next.
Yeah, sorry, I put my hand up. I hope you
No,
saw.
you did it perfectly. That's perfect. Thank you.
Just point of clarity, and I guess Ken can answer this, but I believe in those meetings, road ends, basically the road end sales were going to be funded out of the first road end that we sold. So I think I did not understand from those meetings that it was due to a lack of funds. Ken, can you just qualify that? That meeting, I believe, we made it very clear that we were going to fund from that first road end sales. That's all I had.
Okay, I'll unmute you, Ken. I'm trying to unmute Ken. There.
I think I unmuted myself. Yeah, so the budget includes 175,000 in 2020, 21, and 22 in each of those years for 175 for road end preparation and development. The initial 175,000 in 2020 had to be funded from the General Capital Reserve Fund because we didn't have any sale from road ends yet. But subsequent to that, in 2021, 22, it's funded from road end sales, which go into the Land Sale Reserve Fund.
So Rob, your point's correct. Their money wasn't going to come, and we were never voting on selling all 7. The vote we had was 3 or more. That was contested.
Yeah, that is wrong too. You never made the agenda because your motion never got seconded. That's why. And we had two options, A and B. Once you saw all of them, that it couldn't be done right away, to prepare them.
Carolina, you got it. We let you talk. You've got to give other people the chance to talk.
Oh, sure. Anybody
Thank you. The 3 or more is what was defeated and not supported. We were never pushing to have all 7 sold as well. So that's good to be on record. Thank you.
Yeah, it was never seconded it. So
that's what I said. It wasn't supported.
It never seconded it.
All right. Bruce.
Yes, and I promise not to take too long. I'll keep the timetable on. I just want to say generally, there is a lot of tension around these issues. So I would simply say that we should just recognize that's the case, and thus we're seeing the letters we're seeing. And we should always be willing to cut a fair degree of latitude to people who are concerned or upset. And that's just very human. But this seems to me to be a good time for me to say that I've spoken to a number of people because there are some allusions in here to potential conflict in my own case. And I have spoken to a number of people, and I am satisfied that there is a genuine concern on the part of a number of what would be an apparent conflict of interest. And as I don't think that's healthy, I've never felt that's a healthy environment, I'm going to declare myself as well in conflict with respect to the road end that we're looking at on Turtle Head. Simply because I don't think people should fear that there is a perception out there. I don't have a problem with these sales. We're assured they've been done in Lions Bay. I'm satisfied we need the money. I'm not satisfied in all cases, but I'm certainly satisfied that there's a significant need. So that was it. Thank you, Neil.
Thank you, Bruce. Anything else from council before we go to gallery? All right, any comments at all from the gallery? All right. Any new business from council? Item 9.
Hang on here.
Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, I think, I guess new business wise, I'd like to declare a conflict on the, and I don't know if this is the right time, but new business on the short-term rentals. We have a coach house, and there is a perception, as with Bruce, in his situation, that I was questioned about. And Bruce, I'm with you on the high road. I commend you for that. And I'd like to declare a conflict on anything to do with the Airbnb at this point in time, as there is a perception out there that I'm conflicted as well. So we'll just remove that conflict.
Okay, thank you. Carolina, the hand raising is really easy. It's the button under participants.
What about the bottom of the screen?
Yeah, and then you just choose raise hand.
Her mic's off too.
Far left, bottom, yeah.
I'm having some problems with my computer because there's some screens that keeps popping up, so I'm sorry. Yes, I would, I do have new business. I would like to make a motion either now or a notice of motion. I would like to bring the chief, Jay Sharp, to come talk to council about fire suppression systems and what we are planning so far. I would like to hear, I have some questions for him, and I think it would be very good to have him in a meeting so we can talk to him.
You don't need a motion for that. We can ask him to come. Do you want him to present? Do you want him to present the same presentation as last time, or do you want? Why don't you send questions that his last presentation didn't cover, so he can make sure he addresses whatever questions you have, and Lorna can prepare him.
He only had one presentation, which was when we first got elected.
No, 2.
But we are talking about tanks. We are talking about firehouse, and I think it's important to have him here so council can ask him some questions.
I'll just remind you of the meeting where we've already had on record, and he has said that he's not a water engineer and won't make a recommendation as to a specific type of solution. He just wants unlimited water, would be the best case scenario, and at the very least what everybody else has. And so that's what he's on record for saying that. And we can have him come, we can ask him to come back again. We don't need a motion for that. We can ask him to come back again, but I would encourage you to, because he has already said that twice in council chambers, I would encourage you to send questions to Lorna, and if any other councillors or residents have questions to ask Chief Sharp, that he can come back and address them as well again when he comes back.
My questions would not be about so much about the reservoir. I wanted to question him about the fire suppression systems as well.
Send the questions to Lorna, as I said, please.
Okay, I still think it would be a good idea to have him here.
We got it. We heard you the first time.
Okay.
Oh, goodness.
Thank you. Anything else from the gallery? Any other questions or business? Agenda items, conversation, discussion. Deborah or Peter?
There we go.
There,
All right,
oh. Am I on?
you're on.
So I'm just wondering, by Robert's rules or general protocol, when a council meeting is in session, live, not like on Zoom, is it considered appropriate, properly, or even legal to counselors to be communicating with each other with notes, texting, anything whatsoever? Is it just do whatever you want, or is there a proper protocol for that?
Good question.
My understanding is that whatever they do behind the scenes, if they want to do that, so be it. But the rules of communication that are in front of both the peers and the gallery is what we adhere to as part of Robert's rules. That's my understanding.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Any other comments from the gallery? Rob, you're up.
I would just like to thank whoever set this up because, yeah, I think this is run seamlessly. So kudos to staff who set this up, and because I'm not a really techie guy, but this worked really well. Great.
Yeah.
Honestly, we have to thank Paula. She worked really hard to get this running efficiently.
Awesome.
You did a
Well,
great
thank
job.
you, Paula.
Yeah.
Paul Callio from the gallery.
Hi, I got on here late and I've only used this format once before, so I'm a little
We can hear you. We're all good.
good. So I haven't been living here and I haven't heard about this road sale ends until very recently. I have now moved back into the area and I just found out about it. I've never been formally advised that this was happening right beside the lot right here. So I'm wondering, again, I know so little about it. Is it a done deal, or are you still taking any advice from other people, or what's happening with that?
Where we sit now is staff are generating a plan for a maximum of 3 road ends for the potential to fund the water reservoir and the fire hall and to address our current debt load. There is no selection of road ends that's been discussed or advanced, and we have not had council approve the formal sale of the road ends either. It's only in the planning stages of up to 3 road ends.
Okay, so I still have time to write a letter about how I like it or don't like it.
We're getting them all the time, and encourage you to send in a letter, absolutely. And you can take a look at the revenue generations report on road ends, and that will give you an immense amount of information about the 7 they've recommended out of the 31 that were reviewed.
Okay.
If you want to get a hold of me, sorry, Paul, if you would like to get a hold of me, I can send you the information.
Okay. And I'm just thinking it would affect me directly if it was right beside here, but I also I did hear you discuss it a little bit amongst yourselves. I'm just wondering if it does provide a foot in the door to allow smaller lot sizes, and is that, you know, the direction that we want to go as a village, to be a more densely populated village if we suddenly allow smaller lot sizes, and we're, you know, we're going to change just like Anmore changed. So that's my only comment at this point, and I'd like to spend some time on it on my own to write you a letter.
The other piece that you've just brought up about the density and lot size is part of the OCP review, which has not yet happened, and those elections have been on hold as well. So you've got time to catch up on all of it, and you got time to write a ton of letters.
Okay, thank you.
No problem at all. Don, you're next. Hang on, I'll unmute you. There you go, you're good to go.
Just a quick question regarding the surveys that are being done. How many potential road end lots are being surveyed?
7.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Next question is from Deborah or Peter.
There, I'm unmuted.
You're unmuted.
So is tonight a good time to talk about the infringements on village property by people who have various types of structures or driveways, etc., on road ends that may or may not be sold, and to talk about the history of that, how it ran? I have some knowledge of the history of it because I used to own 4593 Belcarra Bay Road, which is right beside the Alfred's house. And so for many years I owned that and had to deal with, and I was using the road end for my own use. And I So I do have some knowledge about it, and it is an issue that seems to be not progressing very quickly to deal with getting things in order.
This is the time to bring that point up if you'd like to make a point.
Well, the point, when I bought that lot in 1993, I was advised that I was given 1 year at a time to have my driveways and vehicles and whatever I wanted to do on it. And each year it was renewable, that it was not going to be forever, that I had no right to it, whatever. It was a privilege to get to do it. And actually I had to, some kind of correspondence I had to do with the provincial government to have it. And towards the latter years that I owned it, it seemed to drift away and nobody was bothering it anyone. I was kind of there I just was there, but I had no legal right to it. I always knew that. And it seems like it's deteriorated to some degree where some residents seem to believe there's some kind of a legal right to be there for a lengthy period of time. And I wonder if anybody else has any knowledge on how these rights to use the road ends were established in the first place for others.
Would anybody like to respond? Bruce is first.
Okay, thank you. Peter, my only observation about it is that it's been very, very casual for many, many years, in the sense it was simply an issue where if it presented a problem of some kind, the municipality would try to resolve it. If it wasn't presenting a problem, it tended to be ignored. My understanding is that municipalities have complete control over that. Like, I don't think the fact that, you know, one has encroached for 20 years gives you any rights whatsoever. If the municipality needs the land, it simply has to notify you. That's my understanding.
Okay.
Rob?
Just a couple of questions, I guess, for clarity again.
This is addressing Peter's point, though, correct?
Yes, it is, very much so.
Thank you.
Do we have a listing, or do we have agreements or paperwork on the various encroachments in the village? First question.
I would say not completely, Your Worship. Some of them, as Councillor Drake indicated, go back many years, unless they have been brought to our attention for a particular reason. So I've been here just over 5 years. Then we have dealt with occasional encroachments, but for the most part, there are many in the village, and I don't think they've ever been captured in.
Could I maybe make a suggestion that we think about then, is that what we do is we start to list at least the encroachments. Many are very, very visible, and possibly council in the future can come up with a standardized policy, procedures, and processes that we can adhere to and start getting a handle. Maybe start with the road ends would be a really good place to start.
We will start with the road ends, Your Worship.
Okay.
Would that be helpful, Peter?
There may be some encroachments that are not on road ends, that are on the line between the paved road and the property line here and there as well, that are, you know, some of them may be fairly serious, so that should be looked at as well.
I agree. I think a good starting point, though, is the road ends, and because we would have to come up with some kind of a policy, like I said, standardized policy procedures on how we're going to approach that as council, is something they could discuss at a later date.
Thanks. Bruce?
Yeah, just to add, Neil, to that, to Rob's comment, this is a huge undertaking. So I mean, my personal suggestion would be that we should deal with it when it's a problem. We might want to consider, you know, blanket notification of people that, you know, the mere fact that one has used public land for, you know, 5 generations doesn't confer any ownership. I mean, quite a common case has been people planting trees that are on public land that make their property look much larger. Well, you know, if we don't need that land, do we care? I'm only saying you can spend an enormous amount of time with this, and
Yes.
if it presents a problem, we should address it. If it doesn't, we tended in the past to just discuss, was it presenting a problem or a risk? But listen, if you're looking for something to do, there's several years of work here.
Okay, thank you. Don, you're up next.
Just curious, I understand there was a road end over by the two houses that burnt down on Turtlehead. And I understand there's a chunk of a driveway that's built on a road end. So that's a very recent development, if that's the case. So I'd just like to confirm, is there in fact an encroachment on one of those two lots? And that's happened only within the last year or two. So just curious if there's anything that we have that if we did need to claw that back, we would have the ability to do that.
Lorna?
Your Worship, we are aware of that, and that will be dealt with in the time when the report comes back to council.
Okay, thank you. Peter or Deborah?
Deborah this time.
Deborah.
Hi, just with regards to the sale of the road ends, and because there are people in the village who possibly might want to just buy their road end and keep it and not even develop it or whatever, just have it as the property that they've always looked at as an extended property. And should there not, rather than spending the time on though, like maybe send out an email or something to the village and just saying to people, if they're beside a road end and if they have interest in purchasing it, prior to spending the money and all the legal costs and everything to evaluating it, would that not be something that's feasible and possible to send out to those?
I'll take this to start. The lots that have been identified by the Revenue Generation Committee have been recommended because they are of the highest value and the most attractive in their estimation to sell. So there's an expectation that they can be sold, and there's a market for them at whatever the market value is. The intent in preparing those lots, to your point about it being next door to a neighbor, for example, who might want to acquire the property, my guidance, which hasn't been part of these meetings, my guidance has been, think about spending the very smallest dollar figure possible, the very least amount possible, to be able to put a lot on the market so that we know the actual minimum spend as we look at going forward. And an example is Lions Bay sold one lot for $30,000. And we may even be able to do it for a lot cheaper than that, because we don't need to put services on these lots, I don't think. And we don't need to do anything to them other than make them available for sale before we test the market and spend more. So that's been my recommendation to staff as well. And I've said it publicly before, we don't need to do, the expectation is that we hope some residents will want them. We've been approached by a number of residents. I believe we have four notices of interest already for road ends.
Okay.
And so I will say though that it's for the village to receive fair value in return for selling land that it's owned for so long. The importance, it's incumbent on us to ensure that that fair value is achieved, meaning it needs to go to open market. And so I think it's really important that an open market sales process, it allows for the value of the land to be represented by what the market can bear, rather than allowing a resident to put in a bid for something without going to market that could allow them to get the land unfairly cheaply for what the market might bear. We need to make sure we maximize the value for the investment.
But if you gave them a chance, let's say they said, I really want it and I'm going to pay $2.4 million for that, that would make sense too. Then.
As sellers, as anybody selling a house, you may get multiple offers and you can choose who to sell it to. Mm-hmm. My preference, and this will go back to council, my preference is if a resident is at an equal bid to someone else outside for a bid, I'd rather accept the resident's bid. Mm-hmm. if it's for the same value.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
I'm not done yet. Oh, I have a question. Can I throw a question in here?
All right, you gonna piggyback?
Yes, yes, please. So we might want to consider that when we sell one, that we put a stipulation on that a building permit be applied for within a couple of years, because one of the ways we're going to be sustainable financially is that we have taxation on the house build. So if somebody buys an expensive lot, it might have a $3 million construction on it, $2 million construction, and lets it just sit for 20 years. We're missing out on taxation that we are hoping will come with the sale of the lot.
Noted. I'm looking forward to seeing staff's report, which may or may not address that, and we can talk about that more. Point well taken. Don, back to you.
To Bruce's point, and I think Bruce made a valid point, we don't want it to be a make work project for council and Lorna. But I'm just curious and wondering if there's an opportunity that if we've allowed people to use these road ends or part of these road ends, that have we missed out on a taxation opportunity for that chunk of land that they've been able to use?
Well, do you mean if a resident acquires the land?
No, not if they acquire it. Just if they say, hey, we'd like to use this this chunk of a road end, and so whatever it is, 5 feet, 10 feet, 15 feet, whatever. Yeah, you can use that, but that's going to cost you an extra $1,000 a year in property taxes. I'm just wondering if we've missed out an opportunity all these years, but perhaps maybe moving forward we could capitalize on if we are going to grant the permission for people to use that additional land, that they pay something for it.
There has been brief discussion, and your point's well taken. It can be discussed more. There has been brief discussion around road ends being able to be acquired or split and acquired by properties on either side to be able to add to their existing properties, and that would allow for obviously increased property taxes as well by virtue of growing the size of their property, and potentially even allowing for subdivision opportunities if they decide to amalgamate and then exceed the minimum size for any kind of subdivision as well. So all things to be considered and discussed more, both through the OCP proper review as well as staff's recommendations.
But your point goes beyond what I was thinking. Even if they wanted to take up 10 feet of property for their driveway extension, so it's not as extensive as what you just outlined, but there's potentially an opportunity to get more taxation revenue from that would be good for the village. No?
I get it. Sorry, apologies. I took it further. Point taken, and it's certainly something we should consider as well.
Okay.
Rob, you're next.
Just to clarify it, because there are some people in the gallery that weren't at the council meetings, I think the 30,000 you referred to in Lions Bay was the cost to develop the property, correct?
No, there were two properties sold. One cost $175,000 in advance of the sale. The other cost $30,000 in advance of the sale. So the dollar figure was different depending on the level of servicing requirements in advance of putting the lot up for sale.
I think that's Rob's point, yeah.
The sales price. It was the cost to get them ready.
Yeah, the one that I think I presented in council was 2.4 million for what was described as a lousy, rocky waterfront lot in Lions Bay that was small.
Okay. Thank you.
And we have the contact at Lions Bay to get all the information about how they went about it and what level of servicing they did, because they did one that was supported by staff for the process to be able to free it up for sale, and they did another one that was run by contractors to be able to advance the project for sale. So they've got experiences on both sides that we can learn from.
Great.
Any other comments, questions? Lisa.
Thank you. Are those lots in Lions Bay that you're referring to, they haven't been sold yet though, have they? I thought one of those lots that was prepared for sale is 3 years in the go.
I don't know if the two have sold. I know one sold for what I was told was 2.4 million. I don't know if the second one is sold, and I don't know anything about a third. I was making the connection to pass it off to staff as opposed to trying to gather all the information myself.
Right. Okay. And just on a Debbie Downer, just with this economic, what we're going through, this global pandemic or whatever. I work in the real estate field, as you know, both commercial and residential, and there is nothing being bought and sold. I know the law firm that I was working in, 250, there's 7 people in the office there right now. Another office, there's 3. Another conveyancing department I was just talking to in a notary office. This is and I know we're all aware that some people don't listen to the news. Anyways, the banks back east, the conventional back east, are closed and are not funding residential mortgages right now. Everyone's getting laid off. And the realtors have said yesterday to one of the other, no, I'm sorry, Friday, to one of the other notaries, not a law firm, but a notary, just for residential, that the realtors have called in and said, there's nothing. Nothing's being bought, nothing on the table at all, and it's going to get worse. So everybody's really screaming. So that's one of my big concerns. I want this to go forward, obviously, and going back to the, why did we said let's start with one, from the sale of one, because that's all we have the money for. Use that money, do number 2, then from that do number 3. We can change the bylaw and then sell them all if that's the case. We all want that. We know that. We all want that. But we can't just throw all the money in the pot and just sit on these. I mean, we're going to have these really expensive lots, and is anyone going to buy them? So we have to be really cautious here. That's
yeah. Point well taken. It is a cautious approach. One lot only to a maximum of 175,000. I'd like to see it be 30 or less.
Yes, me too.
And we don't have to sell if we feel that and council, based on resident feedback, feels that the dollar figure that we would get is so low that we'd rather have a parcel tax or some other source of funding. So we get a chance to choose based on the information that we'll glean from the market's response when they're available to go on sale. Remember, I say the parcel tax piece because there's no other way around it. We actually don't have the money available to build the water reservoir. So we have to find a way to fund it. And at this point, as noticed as well from the Revenue Generating Committee, it is going to be road ends or parcel tax. At this point, I personally think a parcel tax is much worse on residents
me too.
than it would be to sell 1 or 2 road ends for something that is a mandatory, not a, hey, let's build a rec center. Let's sell a bunch of road ends to make a couple trails. This is not the case. And so
no, we
intended
understand
to be
that.
as conservative and responsible as approach as we can to, and risk tolerant, meaning we're not committed to anything. And the work that we do will never be lost. If the road end becomes available, we do all the paperwork to make it available for sale, and we decide that the dollar figure is not high enough, the lot will still be available for sale in the future. It's not lost work by virtue of having done that. So it's a managed investment now.
Right, no fire sales.
Absolutely agree. No fires.
Oh, wrong term, sorry.
No problem. Peter or Deborah?
Peter. Here I am. Oh.
We got you.
So to solve a couple of these problems you were just talking about, I have a proposal idea. I'm just wondering what the comments are from the mayor and council. So first thing is we do urgent parcel tax, say $20,000, and people who and that money will be refunded with a credit after the sale. That way we'd have money come in very, very soon. And for people who don't pay whoever penalty, we could even cover off the penalty for that portion of it not paid. And that should produce, I would think that a significant number of people would pay that tax right away. I know I would. I've got 2 properties. I know a number of other people who would, because we know the city needs it. And that way there'd be a cash injection right away. And yet the net effect of people who are not so well off, they will have a credit back once the road end sells. So I'd like to have comments from everybody on that idea in general, see if there's more discussion about it.
Well, I'm curious to hear other councillors' feedback. You can obviously tell that we were stressed with the idea of having to raise taxes $356 with the 15%, never mind a $20,000 parcel tax. So anyone else from council want to respond?
Yeah, I will. Why not? Foolish Russian. Peter, I mean, it's an interesting suggestion, Peter. I guess I'm not personally. Personally, I look at this and I can see it may take us a little longer than is hoped to realize the funds, but I'm confident we will see the funds. And to Lisa's point, well, you're more qualified probably than any of us to comment on land values and sales. But I would expect that over the medium term, we will be successful in selling some of these, and we will realize substantial amounts of funds. So unless you can point to, an immediate crisis that needs the money, in which case I'd probably support what you're proposing, I don't see a need, because I think it will be met through these sales ultimately.
Okay, thanks, Bruce. Thank you, Bruce.
Rob's got his hand up.
He's on mute.
Hang on, Rob.
Yeah.
Rob, hang on. We're unmuting you. I'll unmute you. All right, you're good. Go ahead, please.
I don't think anything should be off the table, and we should look at all viable options that we have. But I think as a council, we've kind of discussed this, and I believe our first option anyway was road sales, road ends, and that was the most palatable. But I think that Peter's looked at a couple of options. It sounds like for people that have the money and don't have the money, and I think that if in fact, let's say the real estate market does go the way that Lisa suggests at this point in time, I agree that there's the whole market is stressed at this point. However, I revert back to, they're not making any more waterfront, and these kind of lots, I believe, hold their value, and people that would be purchasing that kind of a property, have the money to purchase it and move forward if that's the case. So, but I think the only comment I have is that I would encourage out of the box thinking, because I think it's very healthy. But I do believe, just for everybody's benefit, that in actual fact, the road ends were the most palatable option that we had at this time.
Thanks. Any other comments to Peter's point, or shall I move on? Okay, I'll move on to Don, please.
Hi. Based on the success of this meeting and the opportunities that may come from an OCP, point was raised about smaller lot sizes, subdivision, money can be realized out of those as well. And based on the success of this meeting, is it possible to get the, number one, I guess the OCP committee selected, and perhaps they already have been, and number two, could it not begin using this format so we can get things rolling?
The format requires, our committee format requires, or process requires an election. And an election by technology is something that has not yet, to my knowledge, been attempted anywhere. So I think that the formation of the committee will give residents a degree of comfort that we will be a fair process, hopefully by the people who are elected as representatives to work through the OCP recommendations. And I think that is a very important part. That's why we didn't just go ahead as council to make recommendations for OCP removals, OCP changes, sorry. So I'm quite supportive of, I really like how it worked for our previous 5 committees, and I'd like to see that election go forward. And then on committees, I don't believe that there's a technology limitation like there is with council meetings that has only recently been, I believe, temporarily suspended by the province. So the ability for us to do this right now is because of the extreme measures. I don't believe that we'll continue to be allowed to have more than 2 councillors not available for the meetings. And I don't know how that affects committees, but technology should continue and probably become even more palatable and easy to work with. And so we can advance things nice and quickly, to your point, I hope. But I do think the election is essential for the committee members to begin the work.
Thank you.
All right, we're running long. Is there anybody else? All right, can I get someone motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you. Any second?
Second.
Thank you very much. All in favor?
Aye.
None opposed. Motion carried. That was